What you do have to have is the ability to know when you don't know what the talking about.
But I just said that. I said that to you the entire time.
I said this believe it. Thought crime. You have intellectual crime, you have plagiarism, and you're allowing one person, you're knowingly allowing them to profit off it. Jesus Christ.
I'm not participating in any of that conversation between Elon
Have
and
a nice day, DJG. Someone should take his phone away.
They're going back and forth about different things.
Joe Rogan has sat across from presidents, billionaires, scientists, comedians, and conspiracy theorists. Most of the time, his genuine curiosity and conversational skills create magic. But sometimes it goes horribly wrong.
Beginning of this thing, but it's like he's in this leftist thought bubble. He is in the most leftist thought bubble available, which is Hollywood.
What you're about to discover are the 10 guests that pushed Joe Rogan to his absolute breaking point.
Where are you getting this from?
Well, take a wild guess. Look at the people I'm surrounded by, you know?
So the people you're surrounded by are telling you this? Is that what it is?
From ideological extremists to corporate shills, from delusional celebrities to dangerous conspiracy theorists, this is the dark side of the Joe Rogan Experience that most people never see. When political commentator Candace Owens appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience, what should have been a thoughtful discussion about conservative politics quickly devolved into one of the most frustrating interviews in the show's history. The breaking point? Climate change.
But do I believe in climate change? No.
You don't believe in climate change?
Well, I think the climate always changes.
Rogan's visible frustration wasn't about Owens's political views. He's had countless conservative guests without incident. The problem was her absolute refusal to engage with scientific consensus or even acknowledge the possibility that she might be wrong about a complex scientific topic. When Rogan presented data showing that 87% of scientists agree on human-caused climate change, Owens dismissed it entirely based on the website's domain name. When he brought up specific studies, she deflected with conspiracy theories about funding. When he asked her to explain her certainty on such a complicated subject, she doubled down with circular reasoning.
Everything. What you do have to have is the ability to know when you don't know what the talking
But I just
about.
said that. I said that to you the entire time. I said this was
The interview became a masterclass in intellectual dishonesty. Owens admitted she had no expertise in climate science, acknowledged she couldn't discuss the technical details, and confessed she formed her opinion during one night reading about it. Yet she maintained absolute certainty that thousands of climate scientists were wrong and she was right. For Rogan, who built his platform on curiosity and open-mindedness, watching someone cling to ignorance while refusing to learn was clearly maddening. The conversation revealed everything wrong with modern discourse: the substitution of ideology for evidence, the rejection of expertise, and the dangerous confidence that comes with knowing just enough to be wrong. What made it worse was Owens's intelligence. She wasn't a conspiracy theorist or a crank. She was a smart person choosing to be intellectually dishonest. For someone like Rogan, who values authentic conversation above all else, that kind of willful ignorance was unforgivable. But at least Owens was upfront about her beliefs. The next guest on Rogan's nightmare list was far more sophisticated in his intellectual manipulation. Ben Shapiro's appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience showcased exactly why Rogan struggles with guests who prioritize rigid ideology over rational thinking. While Shapiro is undeniably intelligent and well-spoken, his views on homosexuality created an intellectual collision that Rogan couldn't navigate.
Ideally, you would still get married and have children in a heterosexual relationship. If you're not up to that, then you wouldn't get married.
The fundamental problem wasn't Shapiro's religious beliefs. Rogan respects people's right to their faith. The issue was the logical contortions required to maintain those beliefs in the face of biological reality. When Rogan pressed Shapiro on whether he thought people choose to be gay, Shapiro retreated into semantic games about drive versus activity. Shapiro's position essentially amounted to gay people can exist, but they should never act on their orientation. When Rogan pointed out how cruel this seemed, Shapiro compared homosexuality to other drives that religion asked people to suppress. But the comparison fell apart under scrutiny. Heterosexual drives can be channeled into marriage, while drives, according to Shapiro's logic, must be completely denied. What frustrated Rogan most was Shapiro's inability to acknowledge the human cost of his position. When asked what he would tell a young gay Jewish man seeking advice, Shapiro offered cold comfort.
Do the best you can as a human being. And from my moral perspective, you try to avoid sin.
For someone asking for practical guidance about fundamental aspects of their identity, this response was essentially useless. The interview highlighted Rogan's core philosophy. Ideas should be judged by their practical consequences, not their theoretical purity. Shapiro's religious framework might be internally consistent, but it demanded real people sacrifice their happiness for abstract theological principles. For Rogan, who values human flourishing over ideological consistency, this kind of thinking was deeply problematic. The conversation also revealed the limits of purely rational discourse when dealing with faith-based beliefs. No amount of evidence or logical argument could move Shapiro from positions he held as religious truths, making genuine dialogue nearly impossible. But if Shapiro's rigid ideology was frustrating, the next guest would show Rogan what happened when principled stands collided with industry power. The Carlos Mencia incident wasn't just a bad interview, it was a war that nearly destroyed Joe Rogan's career. When Rogan confronted Mencia about stealing material from other comedians, he triggered a conflict that would banish him from the Comedy Store for 7 years and cost him his talent agency.
You have thought crime. You have intellectual crime, you have plagiarism, and you're allowing one person, you're knowingly allowing them to profit off it.
The backstory reveals why Rogan was so passionate about this issue. Comedy clubs, talent agencies, and industry executives all knew Mencia was stealing material, but they protected him because he was more profitable than the comedians he was robbing. For Rogan, this represented everything wrong with the entertainment industry, the powerful exploiting the powerless, while everyone else looked the other way. When Rogan finally confronted Mencia on stage, recording the exchange, he wasn't just calling out one thief. He was challenging an entire system that prioritized profits over artistic integrity. The response was swift and brutal. Rogan was banned from the Comedy Store, dropped by his agents, and effectively blacklisted from major venues.
Why did the agent take that stand? Did they represent him as well?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay. All right, so they needed to make nice.
Well,
the whole thing and chose
he
his
made way more
side.
money than me. So it was, I mean, he was way more valuable to them.
What made the situation particularly galling was the moral inversion it represented. The person exposing theft was punished, while the thief continued to profit. Rogan's agents literally told him he had to apologize to Mencia or they couldn't work with him anymore. The message was clear. Causing problems for profitable clients was worse than the problems themselves. The Mencia affair revealed Rogan's core character. He was willing to sacrifice his career to defend principles that most people only pay lip service to. While others stayed silent to protect their positions, Rogan risked everything to defend the integrity of his art form. The 7-year exile from the Comedy Store was painful, but it also liberated Rogan from an industry that had shown its true values. By the time he returned, he had built something bigger and more authentic than anything the traditional comedy establishment could offer. The Mencia incident taught Rogan about standing up to institutional corruption. But years later, he would watch another comedian make the opposite choice, trading authenticity for acceptance. Jimmy Kimmel's transformation from the Man Show co-host to late-night moral crusader represents everything Joe Rogan finds insufferable about modern celebrity culture. When Kimmel started attacking Elon Musk and other Rogan allies, it highlighted the intellectual dishonesty that drives Rogan crazy.
But it's like he's in this leftist thought bubble. He is in the most leftist thought bubble available, which is Hollywood.
The core issue isn't Kimmel's political evolution. People are allowed to change their views. The problem is the sanctimonious tone he adopted while conveniently forgetting his own past. Kimmel spent years on The Man Show objectifying women, performing in blackface, and making jokes that would be considered deeply offensive by today's standards. But instead of acknowledging this complexity when criticized, Kimmel transformed into a moral authority figure, lecturing others about behavior he once enthusiastically participated in. For Rogan, who values authentic growth over performative virtue, this kind of hypocrisy is particularly grating.
Honestly, there's some videos of him in blackface, and those came out, and he had apologized for them, and I think he took that hit and like really doubled down the other direction.
According to Rogan, Kimmel's transformation wasn't driven by genuine moral growth, but by fear. After being exposed for his past behavior, Kimmel overcorrected, adopting the most extreme progressive positions to demonstrate his rehabilitation. This kind of fearful conformity is exactly what Rogan sees as poisoning public discourse. The situation became even more absurd when Kimmel started policing jokes about pronouns, despite making a pronoun joke himself in the same tweet. The left began criticizing him for participating in transphobic humor, even though he was attacking the appropriate target. This illustrated the impossible standards of modern cancel culture, where even allies can be destroyed for insufficient purity. While Kimmel chose to abandon truth for social acceptance, the next guest would abandon reality entirely. When former Blink-182 guitarist Tom DeLonge appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience to discuss his UFO research, what followed was one of the most bizarre and frustrating conversations in the show's history. DeLonge's claims were so outlandish and his evidence so thin that even Rogan, who's open to alternative theories, couldn't hide his skepticism.
So where are you getting this from?
Well, take a wild guess. Look at the people I'm surrounded by,
So the people you're surrounded by are telling you this? Is that what it is?
DeLonge's story read like a science fiction novel. Mysterious government contacts, secret meetings at the Pentagon, time-traveling aliens, and a control system pushing humanity towards some unknown goal. He claimed to have inside knowledge from intelligence officials but couldn't provide specifics. He described advanced technology but admitted he'd never seen it. He spoke with absolute certainty about things he clearly didn't understand. The most frustrating aspect for Rogan was DeLonge's evasiveness. Every time Rogan asked for concrete details or evidence, DeLonge deflected with vague references to his team or his inability to say more. He claimed to represent former defense officials and intelligence officers, but couldn't explain why they chose a pop-punk guitarist as their spokesperson.
I think, I don't want to get into that kind of stuff, but if you don't mind.
But why is it that you want to not get into certain things?
Well, I don't want to I represent more than myself these days.
Right.
So I definitely have to watch what I say.
DeLonge's explanation for his recruitment was particularly absurd. He claimed the government needed someone who could make movies and communicate with young people, as if the entertainment industry lacks people with those skills. The real red flag was his assertion that he had to ask permission before discussing UFOs publicly, suggesting either delusions of grandeur or an elaborate con. What made the interview painful to watch was DeLonge's obvious sincerity. He wasn't a deliberate fraud. He genuinely believed his fantastic claims. But belief without evidence is just fantasy, and Rogan's attempts to ground the conversation in reality were repeatedly frustrated by DeLonge's retreat into unprovable assertions. The UFO community has always attracted both genuine researchers and delusional grifters. DeLonge represented the worst of both worlds, someone with enough celebrity to gain attention, but not enough critical thinking to separate fact from fiction. At least DeLonge's delusions were harmless. The next guest would show how celebrity status could be weaponized to sell corporate products. Robert Downey Jr. S. appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience was a masterclass in everything wrong with celebrity interviews. Instead of the authentic conversation Rogan's audience expects, they got a corporate-approved performance designed to promote Downey's latest movie while revealing absolutely nothing interesting about the man behind Iron Man.
Mr. Doolittle is like a cool... I don't want to say you're not taking yourself seriously, but you're taking a
Trust
risk.
that I'm not.
The problem wasn't Downey's professionalism or media training. Plenty of A-list actors have appeared on Rogan's show and created compelling content. The issue was Downey's apparent discomfort with genuine conversation. Every answer felt rehearsed. Every anecdote seemed designed to redirect attention to his current project, and every moment of potential authenticity was quickly smoothed over with Hollywood polish. Rogan's frustration was evident in his attempts to break through Downey's media-trained facade. When he tried to discuss the actor's past struggles or explore deeper themes in his work, Downey deflected with safe, sanitized responses that revealed nothing meaningful. The conversation felt like watching someone perform the role of themselves rather than actually being themselves. The disconnect became particularly apparent when discussing Downey's choice to take on Dr. Doolittle after embodying Iron Man for over a decade. Instead of exploring the creative or personal motivations behind such a dramatic shift, the conversation devolved into promotional talking points about the film's production and Downey's research process. For Rogan's audience, which values authenticity and intellectual curiosity above celebrity, the interview was a waste of time. They didn't learn anything about Downey as a person, artist, or thinker. Instead, they watched a skilled performer execute a media strategy designed to generate positive press coverage while revealing nothing of substance. The Robert Downey Jr. episode became a cautionary tale about the incompatibility between authentic conversation and corporate image management, highlighting why Rogan typically avoids guests who come with predetermined agendas. But corporate manipulation was nothing compared to what happened when genuine mental illness met unlimited platform access. Kanye West's relationship with the Joe Rogan Experience represents one of the most complex and troubling situations in the show's history. While West never appeared as a guest, his increasingly erratic behavior and embrace of anti-Semitic rhetoric created a dilemma that forced Rogan to address the limits of free speech and platform responsibility.
How does this end? Because this ends. This is going to end. There's going to come a time where they're going to realize, like, this is a problem.
Yeah.
So
the situation crystallized when West released a song featuring Nazi imagery and anti-Semitic lyrics. For Rogan, who has built his platform on defending free speech even when it's uncomfortable, West's descent into overt hate speech created an impossible situation. How do you defend someone's right to express themselves when their expression actively promotes hatred and violence? Rogan's analysis of West's trajectory was both sympathetic and horrified. He recognized the artist's mental health struggles while acknowledging the real harm caused by his rhetoric. The question, how does this end, revealed Rogan's understanding that West was on a path toward complete destruction, personal, professional, and possibly physical.
I want to say this carefully because I don't want to think I want to say real clearly. I don't support people saying that. I don't think it's a good thing to say.
The West situation forced Rogan to articulate a position he rarely has to defend. There are limits to acceptable discourse. While he generally advocates for letting people say whatever the fuck they want to say, West's embrace of Nazi ideology crossed a line that even the most free speech absolutist couldn't ignore. What made the situation particularly tragic was West's obvious talent and previous contributions to culture. This wasn't a random internet troll spouting hatred. This was one of the most influential artists of his generation using his platform to promote genuinely dangerous ideas. The fall from gold digger to Heil Hitler represented not just personal destruction, but a cautionary tale about unchecked mental illness and the responsibility that comes with massive platforms. For Rogan, West became a symbol of everything wrong with modern celebrity culture: the isolation, the enabling, and the complete absence of people willing to tell powerful figures uncomfortable truths before it's too late. West's self-destruction was tragic, but contained. The next attack on Rogan would be far more calculated and dangerous. Neil Young's removal of his music from Spotify in protest of Joe Rogan's COVID-19 discussions represented a direct attack on Rogan's platform and livelihood. While Young never appeared on the show, his actions created one of the most significant crises in the Joe Rogan Experience's history and forced Rogan into an unprecedented public apology.
Since we were talking about fake news, this is going to come up because it's been going on since we've been recording here. Elon and Trump seem to be in a bit of a spat. Joe, you want to check the tweet that Elon just put out?
The issue wasn't Young's right to remove his music. Artists should control their work. The problem was the coordinated nature of the campaign and its obvious goal: to pressure Spotify into canceling Rogan's show. Young and his allies weren't just expressing disagreement. They were attempting economic warfare designed to destroy someone's career. For Rogan, who had spent years building authentic relationships with his audience, the corporate response was particularly galling. Spotify, despite paying him hundreds of millions of dollars, immediately began implementing content warnings and promised to balance controversial episodes with opposing viewpoints. The message was clear: even massive financial investments wouldn't protect him from mob pressure.
To you is that I will do my best to try to balance out these more controversial viewpoints with other people's perspectives so we can maybe find a better point of view.
The apology video Rogan released revealed his understanding of the precarious position he occupied. Despite being Spotify's biggest draw, he was still vulnerable to coordinated attacks from legacy media figures and their corporate allies. The promises he made to research topics more thoroughly, to include opposing viewpoints, to accept content warnings, represented significant compromises to his editorial independence. What frustrated Rogan most was the intellectual dishonesty of his critics. Many of the claims they labeled misinformation were later proven correct or at least worthy of debate. The lab leak theory, vaccine breakthrough infections, and questions about mask effectiveness all move from forbidden topics to acceptable discourse, often within months of being banned. The Neil Young incident demonstrated the fragility of independent media in an era of corporate consolidation. Even with massive audience support and financial backing, creators remain vulnerable to pressure campaigns designed to enforce ideological conformity. For Rogan, it was a reminder that his success came with a target on his back. But the most painful betrayal was yet to come, from someone Rogan considered a genuine friend. Elon Musk's relationship with Joe Rogan represents one of the most complex and frustrating dynamics in the show's history. While their early interactions were legendary, producing iconic moments like Musk smoking weed on air, the Twitter acquisition transformed Musk into someone Rogan could barely recognize.
I understand he owns Twitter. I think it's bad for your mental health. I think posting things public all day and arguing with people all day.
The transformation was painful to watch. The thoughtful entrepreneur who discussed Mars colonization and sustainable energy became a Twitter addict engaging in petty feuds and conspiracy theories. When Musk started tweeting about Jeffrey Epstein files and making unsubstantiated claims about political figures, even Rogan, who values loyalty to friends, had to distance himself. Rogan's analysis of Twitter's effect on Musk was both insightful and tragic. He recognized that constant engagement with hostile strangers was poisoning someone he genuinely respected. The platform that Musk claimed to be liberating had instead enslaved him to the dopamine cycle of outrage and validation.
Jesus Christ.
I'm not participating in any of that conversation
What is
between
he?
Elon
Have a
and Trump.
nice day, DJD. Someone should take his phone away.
They're going back and forth about different things.
But the damage was already done. Friends stopped calling. Business opportunities dried up. Other podcasters began distancing themselves from Rogan's brand. The man who had brought some of the most fascinating conversations to the world was watching his network crumble because of one friend's Twitter addiction. The waste was staggering. Musk had the resources to solve climate change, colonize Mars, and revolutionize transportation. Instead, he was spending his days arguing with blue check marks about pronouns and posting peppy memes. The genius who had revolutionized electric vehicles was now known more for his Twitter beefs than his technological achievements. Watching from the sidelines, Rogan could only shake his head. This was what unlimited power and attention did to people. Even the brightest minds weren't immune to the poison of social media validation. The platforms promised connection but delivered isolation. They offered influence but demanded soul-crushing engagement with the worst aspects of human nature. The billionaire who once talked about making humanity a multi-planetary species was now trapped in the same dopamine cycle as every other Twitter addict, desperately refreshing for the next hit of outrage and approval. These weren't just bad interviews. They were windows into the dark side of human nature, the willingness to sacrifice truth for profit, integrity for influence, and authenticity for approval. Each guest revealed a different flavor of intellectual corruption that made genuine conversation impossible. Candace Owens chose ignorance over education, clinging to conspiracy theories rather than engaging with evidence. Ben Shapiro hid behind religious doctrine to justify cruelty, using ancient texts to avoid confronting modern realities. Carlos Mencia built his career on theft, stealing from artists who couldn't fight back. Jimmy Kimmel traded his authenticity for Hollywood acceptance, becoming exactly the kind of corporate puppet he once mocked. Tom DeLonge disappeared into fantasy, convincing himself that delusions were revelations. Robert Downey Jr. performed himself rather than being himself. turning every conversation into a marketing opportunity, Kanye West descended into hatred, using his platform to spread poison rather than art. Neil Young weaponized nostalgia, trying to destroy new voices because they threatened old orthodoxies. Elon Musk lost himself in the digital wilderness, trading real achievement for Twitter validation. For 15 years, Joe Rogan had built something unique, a space where ideas could be explored without fear, where curiosity mattered more than ideology, where conversations could happen between people who disagreed without destroying each other. But these 10 guests proved that not everyone wanted authentic dialogue. Some people preferred performance, others chose propaganda. Many simply couldn't handle the responsibility that came with honest conversation. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.